Hello everybody, I am Jeremy. Welcome to Jeremy's Open World, my inaugural video. I recently obtained my classic Nintendo 64. I dug this thing out from my parents' place, and I wanted to share with you what I have here. I have not gone through it. I have glanced at it, but I resisted the urge to pick through everything because I wanted to do it here for the first time. So we're going to look at my Nintendo 64. I'm going to kind of share my thoughts as I uncover some of these memories, and we'll see where it goes, okay? So, first off, we have here on top, let me get these. Alright, so we have the two original controllers. So, I first got the Nintendo 64, I believe it was in 1998. I got it from Santa Claus, and I have a brother, and so he and I each received a controller. I think it actually may have come with two controllers, so this one was his. The classic gray one was his. It's the one that he usually played with when we played multiplayer games. And then this clear Mac looking purple one is the one that I played with, and you can even see it has a lot of wear just without pushing very hard. The joystick just gives a lot. On the back here, on the original controllers, you had this slot for, the first thing I remember it being used for was like a rumble pack. Those are standard in controllers nowadays, but back in the day, you actually had to buy your rumble pack. And also, I believe memory cards would go in here too. And maybe even, I remember a device for Pokemon. It was for Pokemon Stadium. You could put your Game Boy game into the device, put the device into the controller, and you could play with your Game Boy Pokemon on the Nintendo 64 Pokemon. But this one's cool. I like this one because you can see kind of the board underneath. You can see kind of the brains of the controller, and the pads underneath the bottom of the buttons. So that's pretty cool. Lots of great memories. Now, in terms of the design of this controller, I thought it was amazing at the time. And now that I'm older, I'm thinking, was this whole side even here, even necessary? This is the D-pad. These are the C buttons. A is blue, B is green, and yellow are C. This was very cool, but this, I don't think if anything, this side was used for holding the controller and nothing else. I remember maybe one game that used the D-pad, but so this is the era before the twin joysticks were standard as they are on all the next gen PlayStations, Xboxes, and now the Nintendo Switch. They have dual joysticks. So that's the controllers there. We're going to set these to the side. Now, the system itself. Let's see what we have here. We have, the AV hookup is tangled in there. Of course it is, right? We have the Nintendo 64. And what do you know? Ocarina of Time is still in there. So I'm going to pull this out. We'll get to this in a minute. So here's the classic Nintendo 64. I believe that we got this, I think around 1998. It had been out for a year or two, maybe 2 years before then. But this is what it looks like. You had the power button here, it slides up, and the reset button, which we never used because sometimes it would stick, and we were kind of afraid what that might be doing. But this is the Nintendo 64. You've got your 4 slots for the controllers. You have these cool little doors for when the cartridge goes in. I've never really looked in there. Huh. Very cool. So you plug, one of these is the power strip, and then of course the AV plugs, which were standard up through the GameCube, and then maybe even the Wii. I'm not sure what the Wii used. It might have been using HDMI at that point, but this was standard. And it was always kind of a nightmare to move this from one room to the next because you had to figure out where these go. This is back when TVs had a big brain behind the screen, and so you had to reach around with these and just hope for the best. Hope you got the right color in the right place. And sometimes you would have screen with no sound. Sometimes you could hear the game but not see it. And it was just one of those things that was just really annoying, but we didn't know that at the time. It was just how it was. That was the price you paid to play your gaming system. So there's the device right there and all the associated cords. Now, let's get to the games. So, as you saw already, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the GOAT, in my opinion, the greatest of all time. This cartridge itself is as old as 1998. So, however old that is, this is 2021. This is one of the originals. I've noticed online when I'm looking to buy cartridges now in the year 2021, there's a risk that a lot of them may actually be fake. But that is not the case with any of my games. These are actually original games. And here on the back, you have the sticker that tells about it. 1996, 1997 Nintendo. And then there's also 1995 Nintendo. Rated E for everyone, but this is the original. I've seen several of these in gaming stores when I go in. And I just wonder when these will no longer be available in stores, because it is such a renowned game. The cartridges, boys and girls, this is how you would put it in this way. And sometimes, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if it actually worked, but if you were having trouble with your game, you would blow on it, or you would get a Q-tip and you would clean out the cartridge, supposedly to make it work better, right? To get dust out, but who knows? Legend of Zelda, this is the reason I got the Nintendo 64. I played the demo in Walmart whenever Walmart used to have the Nintendo 64s. Usually Nintendo 64. I don't remember a PlayStation being there, but they would have a Nintendo 64 hooked up and you could play a demo of the game, and this blew my mind. The level itself was Link walking through Hyrule Field, and I told my parents and Santa, I've got to have this. This is amazing. Before we got this as a family, we had the Sega Genesis, and I will get into that later. I'll cover that in a later video, but we were not totally new to video games. But this was groundbreaking. You had a 3D world, are you kidding me? And it was in a fantasy world, which is what I wanted. I loved fantasy novels, and to see a video game where I can control a guy who looks like an elf with a fairy in this 3D world was just too cool. And so got this, loved it. It was the best Christmas ever. The box that it came in, I can still distinctly remember the smell. I can't smell it today because I've got a cold. But every part of the PlayStation, the Nintendo 64 was wrapped up. The controllers were wrapped up. The system was wrapped up. The cords were wrapped up. And there was this very distinct plastic smell that came with each of those. And it was just the best Christmas. And lots of good memories with this game. I will cover it in detail in another video, but that is why it was in the system when I pulled it out. I imagined it was the last game that I played on this. First game to play, last game to play. So, there we go. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, let's see what else we have. Okay, so I have all of these games that I bought. I have the original box. And, let's see. All right, so the Nintendo 64 games all had this very cool style. So, you've got the cover art here, and you have here, it's listed how many players it takes. It's one player. Designed for Nintendo Rumble Pack, which is what I was telling you about. That's what that is for. But on the side, you have individual artwork. So if you would go into the store, especially used games, you could immediately tell what the game was by the artwork. There is no name on the side. So if the games were lined up like this, you knew, oh, that's Link, that's Zelda. And I love that. It's a small touch, and one that I found to be very, very thoughtful. And then on the other side is the logo of the game. It's just bizarre to think. Here's what the back looks like. It actually has pictures from the game and a synopsis, which is bizarre to think that people actually used to read the synopsis. If you wanted to see the game and know what it was about, you would read the back of the box. Now, I don't know anyone who doesn't already know what the game is about before they even go to the store to buy it. And so each one came with, yes, it is still here, the instruction manual. This is it. So I used to love rifling around through these. Oh, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, so the instruction book. I used to sit and rifle through these. I read them cover to cover and loved it. And get this, on the back, you've got the phone number for repair. This is back whenever you would just repair something if it broke. Now I think it would just be cheaper to just buy a totally new one. And this is the table of contents. And here we go. I mean, I just so clearly remember this being so amazing. It has a synopsis. There's the Great Deku Tree in the background, and it tells you what's going on in the game. And in these books, yes, you have your main characters. You have a map of the world, and it's in color. Very high quality. Now, my Nintendo Switch games, they have a spot for a booklet, but there are not booklets there. If you want to know anything about the game, you just look it up online, right? Why would they waste paper printing something? But this is what the inside looks like. You've got Ganondorf, you've got Zelda, the Gorons, the Zoras, and it tells you how to start the game. It tells you exactly what each thing does. Link's controls. And some of these booklets were more detailed than others. I remember just reading this one. Even when my parents would tell me to turn the Nintendo 64 off, I would still get this book and I would look at the items. I would read about the stick and the boomerang down here and the slingshot. And unfortunately, something like this can kind of contain spoilers, right? Because here you have the three arrows that Link gets in the game. You have a description of all the main items. So that's kind of a bummer. But for a kid like me, it just made me want to play more. It's got a description of the potions, and then the 3 spells are over here. And then it's also a nice little taste to see what Link is going to be wearing. You've got the swords, the tunics, the shields, and the boots. And this is also in the era of game guides. So right next to the video games, you had a rack hanging on an end cap, and it had guides to all of these major games. And now that I think about it, I wonder how much of a racket that was, because they're going to make a very difficult game and then say, oh, for additional $15 or $20 more, we'll show you how to beat the game. Unfortunately for me, I already knew the ending of Zelda before I even really started it, because I got one of the guides, and of course, like any kid, you're going to turn to the end, right, to see what you're getting yourself into. But also, I don't think I would have been able to beat the game. I think I would have been too scared to play it. There were levels that were really scary, and I only made it through because I followed exactly what the words said to do. And so I kind of have a love-hate relationship for the guides. I have those buried somewhere too. I'll have to find those. But my very first and most dear Nintendo 64 game, Ocarina of Time. So I'll put that right here. Next, we have several loose games. These are ones that I bought. If I don't have the box, they are ones that I bought used later on after I had a job. So, a good decade or so after I got the Nintendo. But the first one here I have, and these are in worse shape than my others, I have Quest 64. You will see that my games involve magic. They involve people going on adventures or quests. And this is kind of like the knockoff. I would call this kind of the knockoff Zelda. It is a classic, more like high fantasy type story. You have this boy who's a boy wizard, and he's going to search for his father. I never beat the game, but I wanted it because it's the first Nintendo 64 game that really stood out to me on the shelves, because you have this wizard. How cool is that? So I remember the mechanics not being the most accessible, and it was also elemental. His spells were one of 4 elements, and so that played into the combat a little bit. But again, like, people were so impressed that they were able to play in a 3D world. Who cared if it wasn't the most accessible game, right? I think the same applies to this one, Aidan Chronicles. I bought that for, how much did I buy that for? $15.95, black cartridge. This is one I remember seeing reviewed in Nintendo Power and thinking, wow, that looks really cool. Nintendo Power was the magazine published by Nintendo. But this one was also high fantasy. You have a young man going on an adventure. But this one was new because to me, I'd never seen anything like it. You could create your own party. Ocarina of Time, it was just Link. You encountered other characters, but they weren't in your party. Well, a party is very much a Dungeons and Dragons high fantasy type thing, right? And not only were you given different classes of characters, other mages and alchemists and whatnot, but you could actually choose who you wanted in your party. And so that's why I wanted this one. I never got very far in this, so I'm looking forward to playing this again as an adult, just to kind of see how it hits me. All right, the last free-floating game I have is Pokemon Stadium. I bought this for the killer price of $6.95. This is also one that I bought. It was almost too late for me to be super interested in it, but I do remember I had some friends who had this game, and we had a sleepover one night where we stayed up all night playing Pokemon Stadium. I think we're all kind of desensitized now to 3D graphics, obviously, and to see Pokemon actually executing attacks. But whenever I played, I had Pokemon Yellow on the Game Boy, and you basically just kind of had to imagine your Pokemon fighting. And that's the case with a lot of these earlier games. Your imagination went the extra step to enhance the experience. So when you're playing Pokemon or something like Pokemon, you see your little character move, or they do a little sprite animation that looks kind of like the attack, but your brain is supplementing most of what that attack looks like. Well, Pokemon Stadium changed that. That's the first time that you get to see Hyper Beam in 3D, the first time you get to see Tackle or Fly or Flood. Very cool attacks. And so this is also interesting in that you could hook up your Game Boy games and take the Pokemon that you caught there and transfer them into this. So, yeah, good memories. Okay, what else do we have? Now we have boxed games. So, not all of this is Nintendo 64. We have a random floppy disk in there. So, next game. The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. You knew this one was going to be in here. So this game was different because it required an expansion pack. And that meant that you opened up this top part of the Nintendo 64, and there's this thing in there. Well, that cost like $60, and so I had to explain to my parents and give justification why they have to buy extra parts for the Nintendo 64 that was already pretty expensive. But hey, the way I saw it is Santa bought it, so the least you can do is get a $60 card. By then, though, my views might have changed, but this required an expansion, and I think the first game that actually required that was the Donkey Kong game. So anyway, again, kind of your standard. All right, let's see what all right, so on the side here for the design, we've got Young Link, because you stay as Young Link the whole time for the duration of this game, unless you play as Fierce Deity Link. And this cartridge is the coolest because it's 3D. It's gold and it's 3D. Again, this is the original. I think I've seen later editions where it's got that 3D sound when you scratch it. It's got a sticker, and I think it's multicolored, kind of like this. But this is first generation, baby, and this is what it looked like. So let's see. The book is not in here, but I'm sure I have it somewhere. So I'll find that later. But anyway, Majora's Mask, totally weird. Very weird game. Recycled a lot of the same characters, but gave them totally different stories. Almost like an alternate reality type thing. But very cool. I really enjoyed it. It was not as scary to me because it only had 4 main dungeons, and those dungeons were a little bit better. I felt a little more powerful in this game than I did in Ocarina of Time, and I still have no idea where it fits in the timeline. So there we are. Next, Super Smash Brothers, the original. I do remember when I got this one. I also got this one for a Christmas. Side art is Donkey Kong and Samus. Now, fighting games, this revolutionized them because not only did you not have a health bar, but they were inter-franchise characters. The commercial for this game was people dressed up like the main characters. You had Mario, you had Link. No, not Link. In the commercial, you had Kirby, Mario, Pikachu, and Donkey Kong. I think those are the ones. Maybe Yoshi. I don't know. You can look it up on YouTube. But they basically beat the crap out of each other in a field. And it's just hilarious. It's very much the right way to get the attention of people watching the show. So, oh, I've opened it up on the wrong side. So Smash Brothers, of course, I wanted it because you could play as Link. But even then, I got to learn broader history, Nintendo history through this game because I was introduced to lots of other characters. Samus, I'd never heard of her. I didn't know, and it was years before I realized that she was actually a she. I thought that was a man. You've got Link, Pikachu, Kirby, and Yoshi. And then you had several secret characters in this game too, I believe. I think Ness is in this one, but I'm not sure. Also your items. What does the cartridge look like? I think this is not a special cartridge. I think it's just the gray with the characters on it. Yeah. Smash Brothers. This is one I'm going to look forward to playing. That was one of those required multiplayer games. If you're playing with multiple people, you gotta have Smash Brothers. If you're gonna have a sleepover, that's what everybody wants. Because like Mario Kart, everyone had a character they were partial to. And it was just good fun all around. Next we have Jet Force Gemini. Now this was created by Rare, I believe. Yes, Rare. There's the side art. This is about a twin duo, a brother and sister, and their dog, and it is about their space exploits. Very cool game. I don't remember that many people playing it, but it also had a really banging multiplayer game. I was always Lupus the dog because he could fly. He had extended flight, and infinitely annoyed my brother because of that. Now, the way I heard about this game originally was I received a tape in the mail from Nintendo Power, and they were reviewing Jet Force Gemini. Now, this one is different because the camera goes behind your character when you aim, and your character becomes translucent, and you can aim and point. Because, again, we're not in the age of dual joysticks. We only have one joystick. And so Nintendo had to compensate in other ways, and I think that's one of the ways that they did that. So let's open the box here. I think his name, it's something astronomical. I think Juno, Vila, and Lupus were the main characters. Excuse me. Kind of a boring. Oh, yeah, and they had this little guy, he looked like a little Nintendo 64 character that flew around with them. Looks like a little robot. And then, of course, all the different guns you're going to get in the game. And there's also an ad in here. The guides. Remember I told you about the guides? There was a guide for that. And it could be yours for a price. Telling you how to beat the game. And, of course, the option to sign up for Nintendo Power. Sign me up now. There it is right there. I was a Nintendo Power subscriber for probably over a decade, and I read them religiously. Even games I knew I would never play, I knew everything about them because I read about them. All right, next up we have Banjo Kazooie. Come on, people. I mean, I know this might be a controversial opinion, but I believe this is the improved version of Super Mario 64. It had a lot of the same notes, pun not intended, but it hit a lot of the same notes as Super Mario did. And it was a lot more fun. It was a more fleshed out world. Instead of collecting coins, you collected musical notes, and it was a musically based game. I mean, even their names, Banjo Kazooie, are instruments, right? And playing through, you realize that it has fantastic sound design, and a lot of the characters and themes are music based. And so Banjo Kazooie, this is the first thing I ever spent a significant amount of money on. I bought this from Walmart for $50. I saved up my allowance and bought this game. I remember it so clearly. I was so proud of this game. And I had a guide for this one too. Okay, I'm learning that they open on the red end. Okay, so on the red end you've got Gruntilda the witch. She's the main baddie. Again, it looks like the Rare games, because Banjo Kazooie was also created by Rare. It looks like they just have a standard yellow book. No frills to it. And then the cartridge is here. It's just the basic game. This is one of those that I've hoped for years that they would put on the newer Nintendo consoles. The best we got after Banjo Tooie, which was also on the Nintendo 64, the best we got was an Xbox game called Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. It was not what it could have been, and I was very disappointed in that. So anyway, this is my brother's game, Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. This box has been kind of banged up. Let's see if the game's in here. Yes, it is. This was the best. This was my first exposure to what we would call FPS shooters, first-person shooters. And I always used this gun that would shoot electricity down the hall. And so it had a story mode, but we didn't really play it. We were just more concerned with shooting each other. There's the side. A few more games in here. Gauntlet Legends. Yes! Okay, so Gauntlet Legends. This is based on the original Gauntlet game. I believe it came out on the original Nintendo. And it was, I consider it one of the first, if not the first, kind of dungeon crawler type game where you have your high fantasy characters. You've got different types. In this one, you've got a mage, a Valkyrie, a warrior, and an archer over here. And it became an arcade game. I think it was called Gauntlet. And then this was Gauntlet Legends. And this was another must-have sleepover game because you've got just the best multiplayer experience. On the side here we have, I forget his name. He's the main baddie. And so I'm looking forward to playing this one. Again, as I mentioned, all the games I have, they've got a wizard in them. So this is one, I remember it cost $30, and I was really happy to get this one. Next up, my brother's game, NFL Blitz Football. So on the side, you've got a football player. The only thing I remember about this game is that I never wanted to play it. And when I did, I tried to do this move where your guy would run and he would leave a trail of flames behind him. And so I always thought that was kind of cool, I guess. But other than that, I mean, I remember there was a move called the Hail Mary that we joked around trying to do that one a lot. But to me, I just think it was luck. I think there was minimal skill in playing this game, but it's what my brother wanted, so that's what he got. Finally, the last game I have in here, Spiderman. I bought this for $9 from one of my friends. On the side, we've got, looks like, New York City. This was really my first true exposure to superheroes. This game is really cool because you feel like you're in a very expensive city. Even though the maps are not that big, you are swinging through the city like Spider-Man. It makes you feel like Spider-Man, as they say in IGN. But very fun. That was my first exposure because you could pick up comic books that would tell you about different baddies and different characters. Black Cat is one of the first ones you encounter, so I learned about her. I didn't have any experience with comic books, so this was kind of the way I was introduced to the world of Marvel and comic book characters. So I will say I'm going to be playing through all of these in the coming months, and I'm looking forward to it. I have other things here in the box that are not related to the Nintendo 64. When I first pulled this down from my parents' place, I was disappointed because I remembered owning a lot more games than this. But the reason is that I didn't actually own those games. We would go to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster would have a deal where you could rent a game for 5 nights for $5. And so a lot of the games that I played were actually not mine. And it was also the case that I had a lot of games that I would borrow from friends, and then I would play it, and after a while I would give it back. I never lent friends my games because I was too protective of them, but I would gladly take their game and play it to my heart's content. There are several games I wish I'd held on to. Mario Kart, obviously, Banjo Tooie, and several others that just really were. Mario Tennis was one of them that I plan to find and play in the coming months and post that here on my channel. But this is my collection. I'm very proud of it. Who knew that keeping the boxes would be a big deal? I've noticed that online, that's one of the big distinguishers between the fake games and the new ones that are not the most reliable. And so this is my collection. I'm glad you joined me today. It's been really fun looking through them and having all the nostalgia flood back. Let's see, here they are. Here's the other 4. here at Jeremy's Open World, I'm going to be playing through these. I'm going to be looking at my current collections and my collections of the past like this. And I'm really glad that you're here. I want this to be a fun place. I want it to be a nice channel for creativity for all of us. And I hope maybe you enjoy it. So thanks for coming. I ask that you subscribe, follow, click, like, share, and just interact with the comments. Tell me what you want to see. Tell me if you want to see any of these in particular. Tell me your memories about these games. And let's have some fun, okay? Talk to you later.